We'll begin this board meeting at 6:02, and we'd like to take a quick roll call. Trustee Sullivan's here. Trustee Hupp.
Present.
Trustee Romero.
Present.
Dr. Canby. We've been notified that he will be late. He'll come in later on in the meeting. Trustee Dryden.
Present.
And Dr. Ramirez. Tammy Peterson. And Brianna Torres. Okay, with that, looks like we've got a full house tonight, and we'd like to begin with the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to adopt.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions, comments, or items that need attention? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That motion carries 4-0-1. Next, we have public comment for closed session items. Do we have any closed session comments? Seeing that we have none, we will now adjourn to a closed session for approximately 30 minutes or so, and we'll return at approximately 6:30 from our closed session. Returning from closed session, more than a half hour than what I thought it would be. We appreciate your patience. As we returned from closed session, we discussed potential litigation and other items that were affiliated with what a board can do during closed session, and no action was taken. With that, we'd like to welcome Dr. Canby, who has just arrived, and don't get seated too quickly because we're going to stand up and have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone please stand and face the flag and join me in the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I guess for Ms. Torres's benefit, we reconvened at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock on the hour. Okay. With that, there, we're going to move on to, we just had the official opening minutes. Do I have a motion for approving the minutes from our last meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of the August 20th meeting.
Any second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Audience to address the board. Do we have any cards? We have none, so we'll move on to superintendent's report. I'll turn the time over to Dr. Ramirez.
All right, well, good evening, Board of Trustees. Very pleased to be here with you. Do my best to be brief with my superintendent's report, as there are a couple of other reports available as well. We'll start with just some recent events. We're always very busy here at Mesa, always celebrating, coming together, and just a lot of things always to highlight. But I just wanted to spend a moment and look back to last week with our back to school night. It was it's always a very nice event. It's always great to welcome families, students, and for staff to be able to have an opportunity to meet families, oftentimes for the first time, to kick off the year. We wound up really, in this instance, we actually wound up combining the two evenings. The elementary, in years past, elementary has had its own back to school night, separate from middle school. This time around, in an effort to be more accommodating to families who oftentimes have children in different grade spans. We wanted to combine that. It required a little bit of an adjustment around time. But that was, we also made this an all-adult event, at least that was the focal point, with the intent of really formalizing and forging and reestablishing partnerships with families and parents. And I think to that end, I was very, very pleased, very, very impressed with the way in which our staff through and through was able to articulate the goals of learning for their particular class or grade level, and also the parents' receptivity and their participation overall. So what you see there is just a few pictures. We had an opening presentation for elementary and for middle school, which was also very well attended. And one anecdotal piece that I want to highlight, the support of our PFO. The support of our PFO that throughout the night, they spoke at both of the open sessions or the full group sessions, but also they had prepared a number of sign-up sheets that they supported, that they worked out with the teachers to be able to be very, very detailed and asking for perhaps a little bit more concrete support or volunteerism, trying to really meet families where they are. And one of the things that I anecdotally heard from one of our PFO board members, Steve Lee, was that the number of parents signing up was far greater than last year. So again, I think that that's a very important sign and very much aligned to our effort to forge and reestablish and fortify those relationships with parents and families. So, and thank you, of course, to board members who were here acting in some instances in their role as trustees and community members, but in others, of course, as family members as well. So thank you all for that. Wanted to just switch gears here to a little bit around the learning and engagement side. We continue to focus on these board priorities or areas of focus. And one thing that I wanted to highlight was we are looking to put together our first middle school career expo. We have it scheduled here for this coming Thursday, the 26th. It'll be during the school day. The intended audience is our middle school students. We've received a number of volunteers amongst our community, and specifically parents and families. And what we're really looking to do is expose our students to career options, career opportunities, and also, again, find ways for our community, our adults, to come back and help us in that pursuit. In addition to that, our Full Steam Ahead students are doing their own brand of career exploration just for themselves, and they'll be actually presenting some of that some of what they've researched and uncovered during that time as well. So it's our first time out. I'd like to believe that it's a nice, valiant effort to try to just promote career options and what lies in wait for our students as they enter adulthood, of course. But I wanted to highlight the efforts of our counselor, Miss Inda, and Ms. Hokamp, who is our after-school specialist, who both have been at the forefront of bringing this together and setting up the logistics. When we notified our middle school staff, there's a lot of excitement. They feel like it's something that's well worthwhile, and we're setting up a schedule here so that kids have a good opportunity, or as middle school students, 6 through 8, have a good opportunity to engage and participate. So it's the first time out for us, at least in recent years, and we're excited. And we're just looking to make it a good event, positive event, and then build from there into the future. All right, moving forward, I wanted to just address and bring back a few facilities related items. One, and you'll see it later in the agenda, our district well has been completed. The board received that information some time ago, but I wanted to go into a few of the specifics. You'll see this again later in the agenda as the approvals come forward. But our project amount actually came in under the bid amount. And that is, I think, a credit. It's a credit to everybody. It really is. It came in really on time. It came in under budget, and it also came in a way that, or was constructed in a way that is much more functional for our space. So let me just really highlight the work of Mr. Orlando de Leon, who throughout the summer, BSA as well, but Mr. Orlando de Leon was here, boots on the ground, on a regular and consistent basis for us. He's done a lot for us on the facilities end, for sure. Mr. Jordan Keir, who I know the board hasn't necessarily had a chance to meet, but he is a geologist that the board approved be brought on into this project, and he's been very involved with this project. And of course, ABC Lioven, that did their work professionally and from the looks of everything to spec and in a very high quality way. We have a few things to tie up, but it's really a great thing to be at this juncture. Other contractors, Dieners Electric and Sam Hill, those are quantities that, again, came in well under the bid amount. And thus far, we are very pleased to report that we have an operational well. And that's really what we wanted some time ago, and here we are. Facilities plan. I know that this is something that I won't unpack now, but we did receive that, and it's here. We've been reviewing it. Mrs. Peterson, and this will be coming forward to the board. It's what Dr. Camby, I think it was Dr. Camby that proposed that some time ago, and there was a lot of support for it, which is understanding what our infrastructure looks like, what conditions those pieces of equipment are in. And so we'll be bringing this forward during a future meeting for review and discussion. But we do have it in hand, and it appears to be very, very positive overall. And I think it speaks to many of the projects and the work that has been done here over a number of years. Thanks to Measure O, thanks to prior superintendents, prior facilities directors, and of course, prior boards that have kept the facility in good standing. So, so far, so good. And I think this provides us a real good roadmap for the next 5-10 years, and for sure, the priorities of Measure O, the remaining funds there. So more to come on that. Next, again, an item here that will be discussed later in the agenda, but we are moving forward with plans for the installation of vehicle charging stations. We're still in progress of receiving vehicles come December. That's still the plan. We have been in active discussions with Southern California Edison, and at this point, we have an informal bid process. We launched an informal bid process, again, with the help of Mr. Orlando de Leon, and we are now, we have a bid, a lowest bid with a contractor that we've done work with in the past, and we're ready to move forward. As we're not quite ready to move immediately, we're still waiting on some grant programs that some decisions around that, namely the SCE, or Southern California Edison Small Site Rebate Program, which can fund up to $40,000 toward the project, and Energize, as well as the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District. So those are all grants that are still out there for us. We're just trying to secure as many as possible to try to be timely, and also to try to bring down the overall cost to the district of both the equipment and the installation. So that is very good news. And lastly, or second to last, attendance. As the board is aware, we did well last year around attendance. We're looking to challenge ourselves further by looking to fulfill a goal of 96% for this particular school year. You see there the data for August. It's a shortened month, but nevertheless, the metrics are coming back very positive. You see it in graph form next, but that's the distribution of the month of August, TK through 8th grade. And lastly, we have upcoming events. I always run the risk of neglecting something somewhere. And I'm sorry, it's not for lack of trying. But September 21st, we have the Coastal Cleanup Day, beach cleanup, and that's Mesa's participation. It's been an annual thing. Mrs. Dryden, Mrs. Spillane, handful of others have made that just an annual event and participation, and we're very thankful for them for that. But that will be happening this coming September 21st. On the 26th, as I mentioned before, we have our Middle School Career Expo. On the 25th of October, we have our Mesa Carnival. And then November 1st, later that week, we have or later, and on that Friday, we have a Student Free Day, which not so coincidentally aligns with the day after Halloween. So that's just how chance has it this year. And we're very glad to have it. And with that said, we'll go ahead and conclude my superintendent's report. And of course, be available to answer any questions or take comments.
Any questions or comments?
My only question would be if it would be acceptable for you to pass along that planning report that was done for the maintenance for the property in advance of a board meeting.
Yes, I can send it out to you as early as this week. Yes. We wanted to have an opportunity to review it, so let me amend that. At the latest, as early as this week, as late as next week, we just wanted to have an opportunity to discuss it, make sure there weren't any errors or any confusion, anything that wasn't spelled out correctly or clarified, and before we turn it over. But we're seeing that at a couple of quick reads and getting into some of the details of some areas. It's a well-done report, comprehensive, has a lot of images, a lot of recommendations for big and small around next steps. But inside of the next 2 weeks, the board will receive via email.
Yeah, no rush. I just wanted to get it in advance of like the next board packet, because then I need more than like 2 days.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for all the hard work. I had one question actually before we move on, and you talked about how you combined the back to school night. Was there any feedback, or what was your initial response or about having that combined? I
Yeah,
know
that's
why you did it, but how was it received?
Yeah, great question. The response from parents anecdotally was positive because they were at one event at the same time, right? I'm sorry, on the same date. Getting some of our parents that have multiple children here on back-to-back weeks or even 2 weeks apart is challenging. The other challenge that it creates is that it lengthens the time from the start of the year to the back to school night, right? And there was always, every year, we just alternated between elementary and secondary, and somebody always felt like theirs was too late. So it definitely resolved that, and it was something of a conversation with the staff dating back to last year. Challenges. Timing was definitely a challenge. We had to start earlier in order to create a better set of transitions. And we did wind up ending later than maybe was traditional. But we'll certainly discuss it with our leadership team, with our staff, see their take on it. It appeared that there was some good support of it, but anyway, those are just some of the comments that I heard and noticings that came to my attention.
Thank you. We're moving on. Any other thing? Okay. We'll move on to board members' reports and communications. Anything to report?
There is a Ventura County Board dinner on October 14th, the day before we meet again. So I bring it up just in case any board member wants to attend. I do plan on attending.
What's the topic?
The topic, I believe, is, don't quote me, but I believe it said something, I haven't seen the flyer, but I thought it said the email, the Brown Act.
Oh, I did see that.
I believe so. But we're also going to slightly promote the Ventura County Middle School Mock Trial Competition to board members and superintendents. so that they relay the information to their principals and hopefully continue to grow. So we're looking forward to that.
Ms. Torres? I'm planning on attending that as well, because there's a meeting prior to that I'll be attending, the Ventura County Committee on District Organization, our annual meeting. So. Okay, any other correspondence, reports, communications, interests, or concerns?
The only interests I were going to bring up were brought up already in a superintendent's report, but just urging folks to come out to the beach cleanup on Saturday. It's at Ormond Lagoon. We're meeting at 9 a.m. It says 9 to noon, but it's basically, if you show up, then we'll all be like, it's a group. Otherwise, you kind of just meander by yourself. So it's more fun if you arrive early. The lagoon is more of a wetlands area, not so much as a beach, but in our past experience with different types of Earth Day and beach cleanups we've done, this area is in more need than the one that we typically go to. So that's why we've chosen it this year. And then also just a plug for that carnival, Friday, October 25th. Any amount of volunteering is fun. I know Mr. Sullivan was out helping with concessions and tickets last year, which was a huge help for the PFO. But even just donating a half an hour is a tremendous support on that very busy day.
Yeah. So thank you for that, as those reminders, especially the place and time for the beach cleanup. Also, yeah, that's a de facto homecoming, if you will, for students. I know that my kids, they came almost every year just so they could see the teachers, you know, after they graduated from Mason. Anyway, I have one other concern. I was looking for where to bring it up, so forgive me for bringing it up here. I know we're going to talk about the electrical piece, the charging stations. But when we get there, remind me that, you know, I just made an observation coming in. When we did the whole parking lot project, we put in a new flagpole right there in the front of the school, looked beautiful. But that's been a number of years now, and we've planted those wonderful jacaranda trees that surround the flagpole, and you can no longer see the flag. And so maybe if we relocated the flagpole and the electrical during that piece, if it makes sense to do so. I don't want to get rid of the trees, but if it makes sense to make an adjustment there, that's my interesting concern. And if it fits, it fits. Something to consider.
Trim the trees.
It could be trim the trees, but when you have big mature trees, you know.
We do trim them. We do
I know
trim
you
them,
do
and
trim
it's
them,
it's getting to be that time. Once or twice a year, they do get
Right.
trimmed, especially those in the front. They grow pretty dense.
Yeah, they
So
do.
we do make that an annual thing, and you know, they look a little barren for about, it feels like a week, and then all of a sudden they're right back at it. So I've been avoiding that mostly because they also provide a lot of shade.
No,
especially
I
in the summer, but
want to
we'll
keep the
get to
trees.
that.
But if we can combine something, you know, maybe it's worth looking at if when we're doing this charging station build out. I don't know what that's going to entail. If it makes sense, then, you know, consider it. That's all. Okay. All right. Moving forward, consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I so move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Let's see. Item number 11A, the annual assessment data report. I'd like to give some time to Dr. Ramirez to discuss that.
Well, thank you again, Board of Trustees. I'm here to review preliminarily where last year's assessment data has trended or has landed for the 23-24 school year. Part of that discussion will entail also a review of some local indicators, local assessments that we use and have come to use, and just a review of some of the important actions that we've undertaken as part of our LCAP and initiatives at large across Mesa. So first, just a brief reminder of where we were in 22-23. So now, not last year, but the year prior. And I mentioned in my board report, maybe not, but these are the full release are scheduled on or about, and actually it's later in the agenda, in the presentation, on or about October 15th. So you'll see a more full report made available to the public. So the part that I'm showing you that we'll be discussing this evening are preliminary based on reports that we have available to us, okay? So just as context, here's where we were where Mesa was in 22-23. We're going to fast forward to the next item, which is our assessment report for this year. And this year I did this last year because I think it's always important to view data a little differently, but let's start with English language arts. So this is a year-to-year comparison. The first line is the year 22-23. And right now in that line, all you see is there are 4 levels. And what you see captured there is the percentage of students that were at levels 3 and 4, which is meets or exceeds standard in English language arts. The second row is 23-24, and you see there are some asterisks, and it indicates preliminary data. And lastly, the approximate change plus or minus, okay? So these are different cohorts of kids, different groups of kids. These were 3rd graders, for example, in the first column, 3rd graders from the year prior, not last year, but 2 years ago, and then the performance of the kids that were part of last year's cohort. So as you look across, you see where grade 3 through 8, which are the tested grades, where they land. And then you see the performance for this particular year, this last year that just concluded, 23-24. And one of the things that you'll notice is that in most all instances, there is a positive gain from the prior year's group, okay? The board, as part of our process, had talked about a 5% gain year over year. In English language arts, we accomplished that and then some. And I think that, I'll mention this throughout, but just a tremendous credit to our staff at large, from our classified staff, certainly to our classroom-based teachers who are working on a daily basis with kids in a variety of different ways and capacities. What you also see is, and we'll talk about it a little later, but sometimes things take a little bit of time to get to a place where we start to see the results that we all want. And in this instance, I think this speaks to many of the things that were put in place, not just last year, but over the last several years, whether it was people being in certain positions or certain programs, initiatives that got us going in a different direction, right? So as you see there, the 3rd grade team made significant leaps forward. Our 7th grade team, big step forward around ELA. And in 8th grade, a very remarkable increase there as well. So we're just very enthusiastic that this could, just signal a trend and that we can continue to build on that momentum into the future.
One more time on,
Yes.
on grade 3, that's grade 3 from 22-23 and
Correct.
23-24, 2 separate groups.
Yes.
So if we were to look at grade 3 and try and do some sort of extrapolation, because I have no idea how many came left.
Mm-hmm.
But the grade 3 are now the grade 4.
Correct.
Into 23-24.
Yes. And we're going to see that data broken down that way in a future slide. Okay. Next item is math. Math, as you see here, you know, there's more variability from grade to grade. I wouldn't be able to explain fully why that is. But as you see there, the same. You see the metrics or the percentage of levels 3 and 4 and levels 3 and 4 for this year. Right? Overall, there is a slight decline, but the variability within the grade levels is far greater. And again, these are different groups of students, but nevertheless, there's more variability up or down across the board from grades 3 through 8. Now, bear in mind that one of the reasons that there were many reasons to try to move forward, and I'll cite it later, but I'll reference it now. Many reasons to try to move forward with a different curriculum. And I think that was at least part of the rationale is what we had seen in terms of mathematics performance in prior years. And we are certainly not satisfied with that level of performance, but I can tell you that that's certainly a focal point for us. It has been, but it will continue to be now more so across the board in grades K-5, because, well, I'll reference that later, but for obvious reasons, there's a lot of cause for growth and for a better results. If you go to the next slide, here you see science, and science is for our purposes only assessed in 2 grades, grades 5 and 8, and it acts as a cumulative assessment of those assessed years. So in grade 5, again, different cohorts, 1 year to the other, different groups of students, you see that it's within range, but there's a slight decline, whereas in grade 8, there is a healthy uptick in terms of performance. And in this instance, we do not have the other cohorts or year over year. Next slide. Here we have a cohort comparison. So here you'll see the prior year and then their corresponding performance in the following. So grade 2, for example, in grade 3, there is no grade 2 data to share. There is no standardized data in that year. But the baseline for that grade is 41%. Moving to grade 3, and this is where I see, you know, a lot of cause for celebration, is that we are basically building on the year prior and then really extending and accelerating. Grade 3, you see the improvement. Grade 4, you see a significant improvement. Grade 5, the same. Grade 6, and then grade 7, you know, we had a higher performance there as well. So one of the things that we're looking to do is continue to build from year to year, knowing and capitalizing on the fact that our kids stay with us over the course of time, and we want to see them continue to grow year to year, that without a doubt, and make those gains. The other thing that this data does not show, and we'd have to see the data differently, is the students that maybe were in a different performance band and moved up by 1, right? Or made a significant move forward in terms of their scaled score. So this data does not reflect that, but we see that those gains exist there as well. Next item is math, and there you see also variability from cohort to cohort, from 1 year to the next. So that is similar to my prior comments, cause for additional focus. And just to give the board a reference point, with the onboarding of the new curriculum, it has been illustrative math in grades K-5. There was a day dedicated of our 2 days with staff at the beginning of the year. There was another Wednesday that was set aside for that on September 4th. There will be another full day for those grades on November 1st, and yet another day on January 6th. And those are student-free days over the course of this year. So with that said, I want to just review, and it'll be a very, very brief review of the types of goals and actions that discretely difficult to say to what extent they impact, but in the aggregate, I think contribute, at least on the literacy side, on the ELA side, to increased performance. And I'll just go through a couple of them. Go to the next slide, please. What you see is we have been very meticulous over the last several years of documenting how learning happens within a grade level, making sure that teachers in grades TK5 have weekly meetings where they are talking about what they're studying, what they're learning, how kids are learning, what's being done in the classroom. And those conversations and goals happen week to week to week. The other thing that has obviously happened is that we've made, and we continue to provide a heavy investment in our early childhood. There's some data forthcoming that also is indicating some positive signs with some staffing and also with that collaboration and being very purposeful about it. And lastly, some instructional materials that have made their way to classrooms and are being used to great effect. I would attribute our 4th and 5th grade last year was very, very supportive of using the Sunday system, which had proven to be successful elsewhere, and they brought it on. They were very committed to really changing some of their practices as it pertains to some foundational literacy, and they just went full bore with some of those materials. And I think at the very least, it contributed to some of that performance that you saw previously. Obviously, the onboarding of Avid is another big important piece, and I think that is beginning to be a real unifying part of our program. But as you see there, there's also illustrative math in grades K5. Next, there's just, these are now local indicators, and you see there that the performance of now it's difficult to correlate this assessment with the CASP. They are very different assessments. One is far more robust. This one measures more discrete skills, but nevertheless, it's very important. And you see there the percentages of students that are trending positively. Those are all really important. Wherever you see parentheses, those are all total students assessed, and the percentages correspond to that number. So at or above, you see that there are quite a few students right below that. And this is one particular assessment type, STAR Early Literacy and STAR Reading. The next one is, as I mentioned, Sunday, and this one also establishes grade level benchmarks and the met or exceeded. And so you see that there is a good, healthy number of students in those lower grades transitioning in a better academic standing. Okay. Sunday's got some numeracy, but it's primarily literacy based. We've been talking, and teachers have been talking about what equivalent we have. We do have STAR Math, but in the lower grades, it's not necessarily a tool that we use, but it is something that we've been talking about how to lean into. And we wanted to wait until this onboarding of this curriculum to see what's already in the curriculum that we could use collectively. But that is something that has been very much a conversation for staff. And I just wanted to reiterate the goals. Now more than ever, maintaining a focus on the whole child is very important. We want to make sure that we continue to go down that path, and goal 2 speaks to that in many ways. Our counselor position, Ms. Inda, is now in her 2nd year, many learnings from last year. I mentioned her previously around the Career Expo, but she does so much more. She runs small groups, social skills groups, and we have a small but very mighty group of counselors and psychologists that are doing phenomenal work and have the last several years. And I mentioned the implementation of Avid. This past summer, our grades 3, 4 were also trained over the summer. And just tomorrow, as a matter of fact, there's going to continue to be another session with our Avid consultant who works with us in that partnership. Of course, our grades 5 through 8 are in their 2nd year. They're still focusing a great deal on organization, on executive functioning skills, on note-taking to become more independent writers and readers. But they're continuing to refine the areas of focus for themselves across the board. And lastly, I wanted to just make mention of the fact that, we continue to really focus on professional learning. That is something that the staff, I want to thank them for making themselves available, sometimes during non-contract time and summers and, after hours. They're very committed to each other, very committed to this community. And it's good to see that the things that were really a focal point are bearing some good results for us. So we're very excited, and we're hoping to use that as a building block for this year and beyond. And that'll go ahead and conclude my report, and I will certainly take any questions.
Any
You know,
comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments and questions. I mean, obviously, I think math is the area that we need to focus on a little bit more. I mean, what is the plan in terms of how can we get many of these underperforming kids to get up to speed?
Well, when we have performance like this, it's not one thing. Part of the reason that we wanted to really take a holistic look at all of our materials in K-5 is because there had been some significant dissatisfaction with the way in which math was being presented in our prior curriculum. This curriculum puts math in a more practical way, more task-oriented way, and really forces the issue around taking those discrete skills and being able to do something practical with them. It's very rigorous. It's very much a thinking curriculum. So that needed to be the foundation. And because that then gives way to how we instruct in a mathematical sense. So we will continue to look for opportunities to remediate and to support students even after hours. Our after-school program which has well over 90 students, is also continuing to make math a part of their instruction. We have several programs that students are using actively, Freckle Math being one of them, just to work on those skills. And so we're really tackling this in every way, shape, and form. The other thing is we need to make sure that our parents are active participants in that as well. And I think that became a big focal point of that conversation that I referenced previously around back to school night. It's about understanding present levels and what can be done on a regular, ongoing, daily basis to help with the math fluency and mathematical thinking.
Kind of to that point, I'm not sure how aware parents are about how paper can help their kids. I mean, I've used paper with my son, and it is pretty impressive. I mean, you don't have to have an appointment. They'll come, they're on the spot. And I don't know if parents understand that if you log on to paper, they will be there immediately, and they're experts, and they make the child think. So, and they will then understand, oh, I was just going backwards. It's like, I think that we should tell the parents how easy it is to log on to paper, that you do not need an appointment, that you can get somebody there immediately to help you understand what you're doing wrong, to help the child understand what you're doing wrong. And it's free. It's such a great resource. And I mean, I was at back to school, and it was great. I really enjoyed seeing so many people. It was a great turnaround. But I would like to have seen a little bit more emphasis as to how paper works, and probably not so much to the parents that attend, because I would think that they're the ones that are most engaged and willing to understand how this works. But perhaps to those parents that don't attend so much, they are the ones that really need to understand how we have these resources that they need to take advantage of, and how they can take advantage of. So, I mean, perhaps look into that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's been that product. No product or approach is a full solution, right? None of us would pretend that they are, but we now have platforms, tools that are available to us, the way in which we have done it, and I really commend the teachers, particularly the middle school teachers, but not exclusively, is they actually actively use it in the classroom. And therefore, the thinking behind that is that then students are more likely to have it translate into the home, right? But I couldn't agree with you more. There
I
are
think
ways in which we need
we
to
need
make
to
better
hook the
inroads into the
parents
home.
into it.
Right.
Because, I mean, the students could have a certain level of desire, but then the parents could bring in a different dynamic. So I think that we need to educate the parents a little bit more about what paper is. I do want to highlight the fact that our ELA score has significantly increased. I think it's a very good, promising, and encouraging number. And I want to congratulate our teachers and administration for doing that. I'm really happy with that. I think that's great. Let's just keep it up. And, you know, I understand math could be complicated. And so it's a totally different area. And it's obvious that we need to focus on that a little bit more.
I kind of concur with what Ms. Romero was just saying, and I think that one of the greatest assets that this board has approved and that was brought to us by the administration is this paper resource. And it's probably one of the most underutilized, would be my guess. I would like to see
I would like to
metrics
see
on that.
I would like to see the numbers, yeah.
I'd like to see the metrics on that, on how it's used, but I will, I have a little insight on a small, minute portion of the after school program. I know that they use it there. They use the paper program. And I've also been discussing with parents and teachers at back to school night that paper is not, I call up and I just get the answer. It's
Right.
those students are forced to figure it out
Right.
with the guidance of the person that they're communicating with.
Mhm.
But my gut feeling is, and I don't have a way to say otherwise than that I think it's probably one of our most underutilized assets. That the teachers or the students could utilize,
Yeah, go ahead.
regardless of the ability of their parents.
Mm.
You know, some parents are saying, well, this is way above my head. That's the worst thing I think that we could ever say to a student. But let's utilize this resource and see what they have
Yeah.
to say in a different way.
Right, and I think I would like for the parents to understand that you do not need an appointment for
Yeah.
paper. You do not. They will be there instantaneously, like within seconds. And so well, from my experience, they have been there. So I love that because you could, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, it could be a Sunday night.
Yeah,
So-
yes, there's some products that we've onboarded that some of our students have, and I don't have to tell you because you more or less live some of this, but it's how to expand its use, how to bring it to everybody's attention. I know that our teachers did make that reference as part of their presentations at the classroom level. And yes, it is an audience that's in person, but that nevertheless is important, right? To be able to stress how we continue to move in that direction is certainly been a process, because our theory is if we get the kids engaged in it early on, then it becomes a resource. And more than a resource, here's what I find. Students are typically more successful when they learn to ask for support and help. It's not something always intuitive for students. So it reinforces that thought and that way of thinking that I can ask for help and it doesn't mean that I'm less capable.
Right.
In fact, it's the opposite. The more that I ask, the more capable that I
Oh,
become.
absolutely. And, you know, another thing that's great about paper is that, you know, you're not verbally speaking to them. It's all in writing. So the student has to write out the problem, and that writing it out then helps out the student figure it out. And so I just think it's a great resource. And I hope parents are understand how easy it is to participate.
Anything else?
Yeah, I got some too.
Okay.
I just, and some of them are just comments for thought and future, as you finalize these numbers and, values. But I would be interested, I don't necessarily need to know the answer, but I think it's worth really researching our 4th, 5th grade combo classes and actively following those students for the past couple of years that have been involved in that 4th, 5th combo, because it looks like there are some potential great strides in that age range. And so I think it would be interesting to follow those that were maybe a part of that cohort. My wondering is if that really did help bring some of them up, and then get them current on their numbers. So I imagine you're probably going to look into that anyways, but I think that level of granular detail when the 4th and 5th grade teachers review the data would really help them potentially figure out how to keep those gains and apply them in the non-combo classes. I also, that's another one of my question marks. For the after-school math support, so there's 90 kids in that program?
To circle back on the,
The after-school math?
No, the after-school program.
Oh,
After-school
okay.
math,
Yeah,
dating back to last year, we have not initiated
So
that
that's-
this year, but dating back to last year, there were cohorts of anywhere between 10 and 12.
okay. But this year we're not doing the after-school
We
support
haven't
yet?
initiated that yet.
Are
That
we
is-
thinking
that is
about it?
Definitely in the works. But no, I'm sorry. That was focused on grades 3, 4, and 5 last year.
Oh, okay.
And I was referencing the after-school program that
Okay.
has been using some of these tools and
Right,
resources.
so that's
and
the STEAM.
Trying to
unit.
embed
Okay.
more learning support.
Okay. And then in regards to the local indicators, green and blue are great. They're looking good, but there's some definite big chunks of urgent intervention needed. And so it would just be making sure that we are actively working with these specific students to make sure, I know we think globally and we think big and school-wide, but given there seems to be more than just a couple, if it's under 10%, that may be just 1 or 2 kids in some of these grades. But when we're seeing the 18% and the 26%, those are a significant handful that we really have to, I think, reach out to individually to make sure that they're getting the resources that they need. And then in regards to the scorecard for Framework to the Future, is that something the board will have visibility to soon?
Yes, we actually have a draft. I want to discuss it with the school leadership team first. I think it serves a good purpose to our whole program, but that'll be coming soon.
I would like to add something that's not directly related to this, but it relates to literature. I am so thrilled that VCOE, the Ventura County Office of Education, for the first time ever is going to have a Batalla de los Libros en Español. So it's going to be a battle of the books in Spanish. They're going to publish a list of books in Spanish, and I am so, so excited. I want to participate. We are going to have a team, even though we're not dual immersion, we are going to make it happen. And I am so thrilled about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm excited for that.
Yes.
I had one comment that I want to make, and it's more for an observational piece, not a. I would invite viewers or some part of the administration to look at this data on a more granular level, not necessarily on a per student level, but perhaps on a class level, and saying, is one class, like we have, we're seeing it at grade level, but there's 3 different grades. And is there one class that's doing better than the other? Is there a teacher that has a technique that's doing something better? Or is it simply because the cohort of students they have is different because there's maybe more bilingual people in there, or there's the makeup of the classroom is a little bit different, and maybe that lends to the reason why we have these different outcomes. But what I really want to drive at saying, do we have a teacher that is being exceptional in their teaching methods? For example, in junior high math, somebody's got whiteboards and they bring up small little groups, 2 or 3 people to the whiteboard and work. And does that work for like young boys that need to get out of their seat rather than be locked into their seat the entire time? Or, different learning methods. And are there teaching methods that are being utilized that are being more successful with different groups of people that can be then shared with others and say, well, let's try this together. And we have some data now, and can we move forward with that? That's our underlying goal is we want to help all students to be very successful and achieve their best. And however we can do that, I think would be great. And people learn differently. People have different teachers, different teaching methods. And maybe we can learn.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'm making note of a lot of these, of all the comments that are being put forward, so thank you for that. Just one thing that I will note about staff, our staff is highly collaborative, very receptive, very involved one with the other, and very humble to be able to hear from their colleagues and peers. And I think creating more opportunities for them to make goals and make specific action plans week to week, over the course of a quarter. Those are all things that are now have been going on, but now we're really focusing to an even greater extent. And I hate to be the guy, but I'm going to be that guy. A lot of these kids were impacted by the pandemic. There was a disruption to their learning for a few years. And I know that the further away we get from it, the more that it recedes, as it should. But the impact to some of these young people is not as quick to come together. So I don't want to beat that drum, but I also don't want to pretend it doesn't exist for some of our young people. And we're now seeing them at a different stage of their life, but nevertheless, it's an impact that we just know is real, and we're working with them and through it. So with that said, I just want to thank the board. I want to thank our staff. Sharing particularly the ELA data was very encouraging. I can tell you they were very heartened by it. They were very motivated by it. They can speak with precision about why these things occurred. It was not random. It was not happenstance. And from my vantage point, there's nothing better. I'm going to take a page out of the medical industry. They don't guess. They're precise with their diagnoses. They have a plan of action. And it's that precision that leads to improvement. And we're just getting there collectively. And that's a hard thing for us to do, but it's something that I just love the culture that is being developed, and the staff has been phenomenal, receptive, and collaborative. And I think we're poised to continue that growth.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
No, I just want to echo what you just said. I'm so happy to see these great percentages. But I do want to mention, again, going back to math a little bit, some of these math classes have 33, 34 students. I mean, would it make a difference to have a smaller math class during the school day to possibly increase their performance?
Yes, and I would say that there's parts of the day. First of all, it's a staffing issue, right? It's not easy to break apart classes that way. But the other thing is we have a wonderful schedule in the middle school where there are parts of the day and parts of the week where that exact thing that you're suggesting does occur. And teachers get to work with smaller groups of students, not on a permanent basis. I'm not representing it that way, but our schedule does allow. And I think historically what I saw even pre-pandemic with Mesa is that there was something going on in the middle school that allowed gains to continue from 6 to 8. And once I started looking at the schedule, the way in which students were supported, I would attribute a lot of that to that special schedule. We call it an MTSS block, and it's where kids are extending their learning or receiving additional support. And maybe it's not the complete solution, but it is a consistent part of the week that has allowed us to see a significant improvement. And you can see it in the middle school numbers, and we're hoping that that continues with different versions of it, even during the elementary day. But to answer your question, we don't have a permanent solution to that. That would require a lot more staffing and space. And that's not feasible for us, but our teachers are very supportive of each other and receptive to the idea of a special schedule that allows for parts of the day for the very thing that you're
I
suggesting to
mean,
happen.
now that we have about 30 more students, I mean, perhaps the budget would allow for something like that. Just thought.
We'll put a pin in that one.
I was
Come
gonna
back to
say,
that.
we got another sixth grade teacher.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to, Golden Valley Charter unaudited actuals. Who would like to hear from there? Is that you or Ms. Tammy?
That's just me, and that's just receiving the unaudited actuals, and it's just an information item. As I've written before, Golden Valley is in a really healthy place. They've got healthy reserves. They've got an increase in enrollment that's starting to materialize for them. And I think I would attribute that to their staff and also their leadership. I think they've been far more creative and a little bit more, what's the word? A little bit more proactive around reaching some of the families that are interested in their program. And I think it's for the better. So the unaudited actuals suggest a healthy budget, and I think it's I think it's a great thing for us as a partner district.
Okay. Item 12, public hearing, the sufficiency of textbooks. So we'll now open up the hearing at 7:59. And then to discuss the determination on whether or not each pupil of the district has sufficient instructional materials. And I guess this is where the audience can come and speak to us as well. Let's see much of an audience. Right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 8 o'clock. And having no comment on the sufficiency of the textbooks. Item 13, consideration of approval, 13A is a consideration of approval of the 23-24 unaudited actuals. Do I have a motion?
I so moved.
In a second.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Tammy, would you like to talk about this?
Certainly. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Ramirez. It's my pleasure to present the unaudited actuals for Mesa this evening. Just some real quick fast facts on Fall Census Day, which was October 4th, 2023. 500 students were enrolled at Mesa, and that number includes 2 students that were enrolled in the county programs. The district's P2 ADA was 534.85. And then our unduplicated pupil count, which is also captured on Fall Census Day, was 242, which converts to a 39.67% 3-year rolling average. Our funded ADA was 551.18. And as you recall, last year, the legislature instituted new legislation which allowed school districts to be funded at the higher of the current year, prior year, and they added one more scenario, the average of the 3 prior years. And the 551.18 represents a 3-year average for Mesa rather than the higher of the current year or prior year. The cost of living adjustment was 8.22%, and we had total revenue, including transfers in, of about 8.8 million, and we had total expenditures, including transfers out, of about almost 9.3 million. A big portion of that was spending of restricted dollars, not necessarily unrestricted funds. When we look at our revenue sources, 73% of our revenue was from LCFF. 5% was federal revenue, which also includes about $123,000 that's transferred to Golden Valley as federal special education monies. Our state revenue was 8%, and a big portion of that are ELOP funds. And then we also now are receiving a transportation reimbursement, which is included in that state revenue of 8%. And then other local revenue was about $1,256,000, of which $452,000 again was a transfer to Golden Valley. Mesa, as the LEA, receives Golden Valley special education money, and then we transfer it directly to Golden Valley. In the current year, we're working through a process, hopefully in the future, so that Golden Valley can receive that directly, so that we're not having to continually account for those monies in our MOE, as well as in transferring those and making sure that they're spent adequately. When we look at our total expenditures, certificated salaries were 40%, classified salaries were 11%, and employee benefits were 19%, which constitutes about 70% of the total expenditures of the district. Books and supplies were 4%, and then services and other operating expenditures were about 14%. And those includes the contracts that we have with the county for social emotional services, the psych agreements, special ed services, insurance costs, as well as BSA costs. And then we had capital outlay of about 1%, which was the Category 2 E-rate project that we completed. And then other outgo of $833,000, and that includes those monies I just referenced on the revenue side that were transferred to Golden Valley. So we recognize it as revenue, and then we transfer it out as an expenditure. And then we had transfers out to other funds of about $211,000. When we look at our ending fund balance at adopted budget, we were projecting deficit spending on the unrestricted side of about $410,000. I'm pleased to present that it was, I don't want to say only $265,000 in deficit spending, but that's about $145,000 that fell to the bottom line. So that's good news for Mesa as we close those books. And we still have about 13% reserve. And then you can see those other categorical dollars that we have not spent, which include the discretionary block grant. And the board did approve a plan last spring, and we're working to spend those dollars in the current year on furniture and other operational needs of the district. And then we still have about $241,000 in the learning recovery block grant, which we're using to provide support services. So all told, the district has about $768,000, almost $769,000 in unassigned, unappropriated dollars. So we are meeting our reserve, plus we have about $769,000 left over. When we look at a comparison between 23-24 as compared to 22-23, even though we had an 8.22% COLA, you can see our LCFF revenue only grew by 3.74%, and that's a function of declining enrollment. We're only funded for those students that for ADA, so we don't necessarily receive that full 8.22%. It is a little bit, it can be conversely, when you're growing, it grows faster. So the ideal situation for a district is to be growing, but that's one of the difficulties in declining enrollment is that you're not, even though there's an 8.22% COLA, the district's not receiving that in a total increase in funding, if that makes sense. Our federal revenue dropped by about 13%, and that's because we've expended all of those ESSER dollars in prior years. We didn't recognize any expenditures in the 23-24 school year. Our state revenue also was down significantly, and that's because in 22-23 we had large sums of one-time monies. We had the discretionary block grant I just mentioned. We had the learning recovery dollars also in the prior years. And so we're seeing these one-time monies disappear. So it's going to be important for the district to continually look for ways to conserve cash and maintain adequate funding levels as we move into future years. When we look at our expenditures, they increased as a whole by 4.78%. The biggest increase was in books and supplies, and that's just a function of replacement of computers, those types of things. We did purchase staff computers in 23-24. And then we transferred out $210,000 this year as opposed to $200,000 in the prior year. So when you combine both the restricted and the unrestricted, we had deficit spending of $467,000. But again, we have that unassigned, unappropriated amount of $768,000, which is down by about 40% from the prior year. And that's just a function of the decrease in reserves. When we look at our other funds, we have about $571,000 in the cafeteria fund, and we have done the net cash resources calculation. We're slightly over it. We are allowed to have 6 months operating capital, and so we're just slightly over that. And so Dr. Ramirez and I have been working on a plan in order to spend that down. We can have 6 months, and I think we're at like 6.7 months. So we're just slightly over in that regard in Fund 13. Our deferred maintenance fund, we have about $695,000. People transportation and equipment fund, we have $161,000. And special reserve technology fund, we have about $57,000. And in the equipment fund, $12,000. So between those 4 funds, we have an additional $926,000 that, if need be, the district could transfer those funds back to the general fund for operations. In the building fund, we have about $2.8 million. We did spend $706,000 in 23-24, and that's the bulk of that is for the well project. Most of those expenditures occurred in 23-24, and then we have a little bit that carried over to 24-25 because we don't pay at the end of the project, we pay progress payments with a 5% retention. When we look at the capital facilities developer fee funds, we have about $110,000. And then in the county schools facility hardship, we have about $60,000. And then in the bond interest and redemption fund, in the combined 3 funds, we have about $1.3 million, but those monies can only be used for debt service on the bonds. So all told, the district is in a good fiscal position, and we're just working to maintain those levels as we move forward. Negotiations have been settled for the current year, so that will be helpful for planning purposes as we move into the future years. Are there any questions? Concerns?
Approximately how much money does a school get per child, per student, I should say, a school year?
It varies depending, the unduplicated pupil count really drives that percentage. So I can speak exactly to what Mesa received. Based upon unaudited actuals, we received in 23-24, $11,633 per ADA.
So with that, how many students are currently enrolled in Mesa? 596 or 7?
In the current year,
The current
we're
year,
projecting, fall census day hasn't been captured yet.
But
But we're
570
tracking
was
about
included in
595.
these, right?
Last year, it was the 570 students that I referenced. So in 23-24. But you're not funded at that level. You're only funded on the ADA, actual attendance.
So the ADA, to keep it basic, it's a calculation of attendance plus enrollment in that factor. And so we don't receive the full amount for every student, right?
That's why attendance is so important.
That's why, and historically, Mesa has had normally between a 94 and 95%. But after COVID, most districts in Ventura County, we all dropped to be about 91 or 92. And every percent gain that you make is significant as it relates to your ADA collection.
And this is another, it's balancing act, it's another communication piece that we need to have. But, you know, in light of COVID, you know, we want to, if your child's truly sick, we want them to stay home. But we want them to be here otherwise.
Correct. And that is something that we've been very consistent about. and working down to the individual student and family. And put the funding aside, as important as that is, it's just a matter of developing good habits, continuity of learning, engagement, connection to others. I mean, the list goes on and on about the social and emotional and learning benefits. And in addition to that, there is a financial incentive for us. Sometimes there's a cynical view of looking at that, but it is a reality. And it's just where we are. So it's a great question that you're asking, because sometimes it can be misinterpreted when it comes to the actual number that we receive. One way of looking at it is we are eligible for 11,633, but we receive a figure smaller than that, right?
About 95% of that.
Right. What about the TK students who don't technically qualify for us to receive funding? How many of those students fall within that category?
I don't have an exact number for you from last year. I'd have to look at it for this year. We do have a few, and those would be unfunded, right?
Right.
So it's in our interest for a variety of reasons to bring them on, oftentimes siblings, gives them a good start to their education. The list goes on and on there. But technically speaking, we don't receive funding for them. The
Although
state has been
with the
moving back
implementation of TK, the date has moved. It started
Right.
originally on December
Right.
6th, then it went to February 6th. Last year was April 6th, and then this year it's June. Or
So-
2nd, sorry, excuse me.
Right, so that number is getting
7%.
smaller over the years. But I remember 2 years ago, we were at about 15. I think it was.
Yeah,
that
and
was the
last year
number.
the number was pretty high too, I
Yeah,
believe.
I think 2 years ago, the number was about 15. When you look at it, that's almost a whole class worth. But again, it was a long-term view, right? Having our kids come in early, but.
How many
This
of-
year it's 34. Right?
There's
of
34
to-
TK
Of
enrolled.
total
34
TK,
TKers.
correct. But of those, how many don't fall into the window? It's a smaller fraction.
It's very small.
Do we know whether those students who fell within that window returned for kindergarten?
We have a very high retention of kindergarten TK going into kindergarten. I wouldn't be able to tell you down to that level, but we retained well over 90% of the students who were in TK and TK.
I would also add that once a child starts here at Mesa Union, their chances of finishing here are extraordinarily high. I can't, we're anecdotally, and I've done this for a number of years, it's not scientific, but I would say that probably better than 70% of the students that start in kindergarten will be promoted to high school.
And
that's-
actually,
That's conservative on the low side.
and I just looked at the number for last year. We had 10.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
did not, whose
But-
birthday fell after April 2nd.
To a more important point, there are numerous studies that come out and say that the chronic absenteeism is a much greater thing. And that, if we can communicate, and I don't know the proper way to communicate to parents, is that the more time they spend at school, the more successful they'll be in life. Not just in high school, but for the rest of their lives. So the chronic absenteeism just sets them up for a non-successful life beyond high school. And so if we can develop those habits and encourage, good attendance, and it is very most challenging amongst TK and kindergarten saying, oh, it's what are they gonna learn? They're not gonna learn their letters today. And I'll keep them home. We're gonna go to Disneyland or wherever. And they'll, at the drop of a hat, they'll take their child out of school. But it has a ripple effect in so many different ways.
Yeah, as we bring this conversation to a close, or this report to a close, there was one point that I wanted to just make mention of, because I know it's been a conversation, a broader conversation, which is, just want to inform the board that we will not be pursuing any sort of waiver from the county around thresholds put forward by the CEA. So that's just a good footnote to the board, and based on just prior conversations that we've had.
I did see that it's gonna be about 62.35% or so.
That is correct.
And 60% is the threshold. Right.
And I was just gonna ask, I was gonna ask you this afterwards, but since it's been brought up, how much is that number impacted by the monies that come in and go out to Golden Valley? Because
It's not.
our budget,
It's not.
Okay, I have to
It's
ask.
one of those objects that are outside, it gets deducted.
And then the next one is how much of it is impacted by the fact that we're utilizing resources from BCOE. Does that get counted or not counted in that amount? Because in many school districts, well, most school districts, they'd be hiring those people, and how would that impact the overall?
Let me just answer that. Any contracted service with an external agency, hiring, but BCOE happens to be our biggest partner, would not be calculated. It would fall into a different object code.
It's looking at object codes 1 through 3, which are certificated salaries, classified salaries, and benefits. It excludes anything that's a 4 or 5, and any of the contracted services that we contract.
That would be a
for are
contracted
5.
service. Yeah, I'm sorry, but just wanted to clarify that those contracted services for us is mainly because they occur in fractions of time where
Right.
we ourselves as a district would most likely not be able to hire a person and retain them and their services. So we still need the service.
We need
We
service.
oftentimes hire a person or series of persons
A
depending on
portion
the
of a
service.
person.
But it does not factor into that calculation, right? And those are just
Yes,
important
but
pieces
in
to
most
know.
other school districts, it would.
It would count, yes.
It would count.
Well, I see.
And then
Because
the
we're
other
so
piece of
small
it
that we
also
don't, but
is, we do have students in the county program that have one-on-one aides. And we're not able to serve them because they're one-off type disability. And so that aide, if that student were part of MESA, that would be counted. But because they're in the county program, they don't count.
So they perform a very vital role to the school. But it's not something that's calculated with that. Anyway, enough of that. Any
So-
other comments or questions?
My other request is that the link is not working on our posted agenda, so I'd like a copy of the presentation.
Right.
My link is working. I just clicked on it.
No,
Right.
not that, the
No, I tried
presentation.
clicking on it. You have the entire 150
You're
some
looking,
odd
yeah, you're
pages,
looking at the.
as
full
opposed to
report.
the 20 some odd page report that she just shared with us.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about, is that the link to the
The
to Pam's
presentation.
presentation
The
is
un-
not functioning. That's broken. I tried it as well.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anything else? Let's move on. Oh, wait, we need to approve. All those in favor of approving the 2023-2024 unaudited actuals, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item B, consideration of adoption of resolution 24-25-01, the GAM limit. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion about the GAM limit?
It was 0, so we did not
It was 0.
exceed the.
So. All those,
Allocated
any
in
further
the-
questions, any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving, resolution 24-25-01, the GAM limit, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of the use of the 2024-2025 Proposition 30 Educational Protection Account Funds. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
And second,
I'll second the motion.
any discussion?
I wanted to allow Mrs. Peterson just to make a quick point because we did receive a question pertaining to Prop 30. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Peterson.
I think you were questioning the discrepancy between adopted budget versus.
Well, the two figures that were given were wildly different for last year, the 2023-24 versus, so yes, versus the adopted for 2024-25. You know, because it's a difference of 816,000 and then $1.8 million. So I hope, yeah.
Right. EPA is portion of LCFF. It's just how it's recognized. So they use it as 2012, 2013, the builders passed an initiative where we're allowed to, or where those individuals who earn over $250,000 for tax at a higher rate. And so that was usually a special account, and that's utilized. We cannot, those monies can be used to remove to itself. But those monies, because it is based on the highest tax rate, fluctuate significantly year over year. So when you look at 21, 22, it was 75% of, or I'll say like that. Last year it dropped to 12%, this year it's back up to 22%. So they fluctuate wildly from even adopted budget to, from the interims to the estimated actuals, and then what we actually recognize and how it actually, everything is calculated. So it's just a function of these particular funds, but we're required to report out how the monies are used to the board, and then also that.
Well, you said,
Never-
and then you said it can't be used for administration, but it is used for teacher salaries, so that's not considered
That's how we track.
100%, right?
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the 2024-2025 Prop 30 Education Protection Account Fund, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item D, consideration of the approval of the new adult snack rate of $1.67 increase for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
What does that bring the total cost to? Ish.
Sorry, maybe that was framed incorrectly, but that is the increase inclusive. So it's increased to $1.67.
It's $1.67.
So it's not framed correctly. It should say, it should read snack rate of consideration approval of new adult snack rate increase to $1.67.
So the increase is in the wrong spot.
Well. So that's the rate increase, it's not staff, it's the rate increase. Because when you look, read under below, it says it's the recommendation, to approve the new adult breakfast and lunch rate increase for the fiscal year. So the breakfast and lunch rate was increased by $1.60.
That's
So
how I
it-
read
So it
it.
is written correctly, sorry.
Because it
I'm
was
sorry.
more than that for a meal.
Yes,
before,
correct.
So that's
The actual amount is like $4.
ish, yeah.
Yes, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, so
And those are, and that's determined with the state level.
So is this like a just pass through?
It's
That we have to approve that?
We're
It's like an ad cost.
The bill to charge any adult. For for breakfast and for lunch.
Right.
So there's a minimum amount that have to be charged.
Okay.
So you receive those, that information, you need to.
So it's out of our hand. Okay,
So
any other-
we also have to pay sales tax.
right, of course. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the new adult snack rate of $1.67 increase for the fiscal year 24-25, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That is gonna matter, right? Okay, item E, consideration of the approval of draft and ratification of the invoices from McClay Construction Inc. I have a motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All I know is that the cafeteria is really excited about having that new store now.
And we did use category.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna point out is
Yes,
that we were
yes.
able to use grant fund money instead of cafeteria or general fund for that.
that is
project.
correct. That is correct. And it has because our cafeteria, our cooking area in particular is so limited, this allowed us to effectively expand, albeit on a different side of the kitchen, but it has provided a tremendous amount of relief.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving and ratifying the invoices from McClay Construction, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item F, consideration of the approval of the notice of intent to Sonel Construction and Engineering for EV charging stations. Can I get a motion?
I so move.
Second,
Second.
discussion. This is where I was looking for about the thing. So it works, it doesn't.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Right now, that wouldn't be in the specs. Right
Right.
now, the install will happen. There's a small island over on the middle school parking lot. Where we identify, or where we're looking, it's actually where buses were formerly parked. And we're looking to repurpose that area to put in pads and be able to do the install there.
But you also need to move, you gotta pull power from this
Correct,
point to there.
correct, which
Yeah.
will be done through boring.
Boring.
Yes,
See, it's a non-issue.
yes, yes, it will be done through boring, and that in many ways increases the cost because of the proximity to the right amperage.
I see that this is a notice to award them the contract. Do we have a copy of the contract, their scope of work, so that we can see what is covered?
Yes, we can bring it forward in a future agenda.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah. I'll ask the question. Again, this is being paid for.
Right now, it's intended to be our deferred maintenance fund, our facilities funds. This will not be Measure O. But we're looking to bring down that cost through grant funding.
Right. Okay. All those in favor of approving the notice of intent to Sonel Construction and Engineering for the EV charging stations, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. It carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of this is item G, consideration of approval of the HC. I think it was, how do you pronounce that? I've been saying it wrong. Lyoven, proposed change orders. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? I'm gonna say approve because it went down.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is one of those times when the change order goes the other way, so. Yes, that's a good thing.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the ABC Lyoven proposed change order, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That looked like that was a good move there, Mr. Wright. Carries 5-0 in favor. Item H, consideration of approval of the notice of completion by HC Lyoven Drilling Inc. for the well drilling project. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Been moved, second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the notice of completion with HC Lyoven Drilling Inc. for the well drilling project, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor.
I did have one question for Dr. Mears, and what
Okay.
part of that, not to do with the completion, but we had talked about the irrigation as part of that, and you were gonna, have we done that yet? Well, we've kind of done the review of the irrigation and what needs to be done there.
Dr. Canby, you couldn't have served it up any better. Just over the last 4 days, dating back to late part of last week, we contracted with a contractor who came out to do that audit. They actually are preparing a report on that, a report out, but they actually were on site Friday into yesterday, Monday. Just really familiarizing themselves with the irrigation system as it's built and with the with the main main unit that's out right next to the power power panel, the electrical panel out in the well enclosure. And they actually fired up the system. It is running, but there are a number of repairs that they'll have to make, including some main lines, sprinkler heads and things of that nature to really get the system fully operational. But along with that, we are looking to bring lines, they're already there, but fully have access to water over in the well, I'm sorry, in the farm area, which is part of that design. So the system is operational, it's functional, but there are repairs that need to be made to it. And I'm waiting for a proposal here soon. But that audit happened late last week into just yesterday, Monday.
Thank you. But they got water through the system.
Yes,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
at the right pressure too. They already made some good headway in terms of getting the system back up in there.
It's moving. That's an exciting thing. Okay, item number I, consideration of adoption of resolution 24-25-02, sufficiency of textbooks.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Anyone?
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the resolution 24-25-02, sufficiency of textbooks, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item J, consideration of approval of MOU with Steco in the Tejena Community Organization Project. Forgive me for messing that up. I tried. That motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Comments or questions?
Only that we contract with MyCop on an annual basis to provide primarily interpretation services, but primarily interpretation services for our Mixteco indigenous families. And they are a great organization, very reputable and very supportive. So it doesn't happen very frequently, but it's a very worthwhile partnership.
Anything else? All those in favor of approving the MOU with MyCop, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item K, consideration of the adoption of the June 2024 board policy revisions for the following sections as outlined, as amended or approved. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
How would you like to go over the options?
Pardon me? With the options.
Would you like me to recite them for you?
I reviewed the options. They all look fine to me.
Well, we have to make a
there-
choice.
I mean, is
Oh, the
there-
recommended
is
option
there-
one on 113 or 1113.
I think that's fine.
And 6164.2 is recommended option one.
Yes,
And 6177 recommended option one.
that looks good.
Am I going too fast?
No.
So I just wondered if it'd be more helpful, like option one for the first one is to continue, releasing photos and names that can be published unless the families tell us otherwise.
Right.
Versus option two would be that we shall not publish without consent. So we're currently doing one and we want to continue doing one.
Correct.
Right.
And then for 6164.2, option one was to allow colleges, employers, military access. Option two is to not allow access, which is also our current practice. Right,
Option one.
yep.
Okay.
And then the summer school program is 6177. Option one is that we're not required to offer summer school, We do currently, but it's not required versus
Right.
number two, it has to be required. So we're just not. We don't need to make it requirement. I like it being optional where we base it on need.
Need and funding. Mhm.
But, you know. What's the next one? The next one is the 9220, which is about board elections. So option one is consistent with our current policies where we do it by trust area, as opposed to option two, which is at large, and opposed to option three, which is a hybrid. The statement of qualification,
Wait, could we go back? Did you skip over, 6177?
no, that's summer school.
That's the summer school one? Okay, never mind.
But yeah, so the elections, the first option one is consistent with what we're doing by area. The option two is at large, option three is hybrid. Recommendation for the statement of qualifications is also what we're currently doing, which is a 200 word limit. Option two is a 400 word limit. The next one is the recommendation of option two, which is that the candidates will pay for a statement if they would like a statement. Option one was that the district will always pay for statements.
Well, option two also says that the candidate would pay for like advertisement, brochures,
Right.
mailers.
Right. The candidate is paying
It's
for
responsible for the financial running of that. Okay.
which what was historically have done.
Yes.
The other one is about tie votes. And so recommendation was for option two, which was to have a runoff versus option one, which was a tie decided by lot.
That's by the board. So if there's a tie, then the board would decide versus runoff.
No.
They would
No.
run.
Lot is not by board.
No. Lot is a different process. The recommendation is that there be a runoff.
Right.
Yeah, we don't get to decide.
Right. The board is not involved in that process.
For 4121 regarding personnel, the salary and benefits, the recommendation was for option two, which is consistent with what our practice is, which is for temporary employees or substitutes not participating in healthcare plans as a district versus option one, which is the district providing healthcare plans to substitutes. And then similarly for paid sick time, option three is that it would not carry over for temporary staff. They wouldn't accrue that in a carryover. Which is consistent with the current practices. So the 4261.1, the recommendation for option one is consistent with what we're doing, which is once sick time is exhausted, then it would be the salary minus the cost of the substitute. Option two was that they would be 50% of staff salary. And then parental leave under that same personal injury and leave is that recommendation three was consistent with current practices, which is that you can't roll over or accrue sick time after you've exhausted. Those are at least as outlined
with
and
the
as
precedent.
recommended. So I personally agree with the recommendations as presented.
Right, any other comments or questions?
No,
about that?
I think the recommendations are in line with what we have.
Exactly. So let's return to this. All those in favor of adopting the June 2024 board policy revisions with the outlined recommended options. I think I said that right. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Consideration of approval is the next one, I'm sorry. Item L. Consideration of approval of the kindergarten field trip request for the Great Pacific Pumpkin Patch. Do I have a motion?
I'll make
so
a
moved.
motion. I'll second the motion.
Okay, any comments or questions? I'm gonna ask how they're being funded.
This one is being supported by PFO.
CFO. I'm strongly in favor of it. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the kindergarten field trip request to Great City Pass, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item number N, consideration of the approval of sixth grade field trip, request to Pally Institute. Do I have a motion? Second,
I'll second the motion.
any, questions or comments?
How much approximately are families paying this year for their students to go to Pally?
That is still in development. I can tell you last year, the number was in the neighborhood of 10,000 total.
I mean,
But
per
this
student.
year is still in progress.
But she's looking for, per student cost.
I'm wondering how it directly affects families, because I know costs for all of these have been increasing. And I think the PFO contribution is similar, so I'm wondering how that either
Yes.
affects the families or if the district is
It-
paying a larger portion.
It affects the district and the district is paying a larger portion. So we'll have to definitely put a pin in that conversation because we'll have to have ongoing discussions about a more sustainable way of making these trips occur and happen.
Any other questions or comments? This is just approving the field trip of itself,
That is correct.
and not the request to have it, not the final.
It is the request, but it's not the contract,
Right,
right? So the contract was approved
right.
some time ago. This is the request because it is an overnight trip, right? So
Right.
that's part of the reason that it gets presented this way.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the sixth grade field trip to Pally Institute, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item N, consideration of the approval of the third grade field trip to SEAC.
I so move.
Second.
Who was the second?
Sandra.
Sandra second?
Oh,
Ju-
Dr. Camby. Okay,
Okay, Dr. Cameron.
so Dr. Camby's the second. Again, how's this being funded?
This one is funded from PFO.
PFO?
No, there's,
I'm
or
sorry.
there's no
This
cost to
one, there's
attend.
no cost to attend.
It's just the transportation.
There's no cost to attend. So the transportation, the district has covered that through our own staffing and transportation budget. Thank you for that.
Anything else? All those in favor of approving the third grade field trip to SEAC, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. Item 14A, personnel. Consideration of approval of the ratification of the FMLA leave request for employee number 279 effective August 22nd through January 6th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving and ratifying the FMLA leave request for employee number 279, effective August 22, 2024 through January 6, 2025, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That carries 5-0 in favor. Items for future consideration, facility systems, assessment and by, B, I'm sorry.
There's a
My
B,
good notes. Sorry, consideration approval of the FMLA request for employee number 255, effective October 11th through November 22nd, 2024.
I so move.
The second,
I'll second.
any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving this FMLA leave request for employee number 255, effective October 11th, 2024 through November 22nd, 2024, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries 5-0 in favor. I ask your forgiveness for skipping over that. Thank you. Future consideration is the facility systems assessment by PBS engineers. Our next meeting is October the 15th at 6 p.m. And there goes my battery, like several others. And November 19th, regular board meeting. I'm gonna have to look back on that if I can make that. Talk to me. And December the 17th is a regular board meeting. And that meets within our
time frame as far as redoing things. Okay,
Yes.
with that, this board reorganization, exactly. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:47. Do I have to have a motion for that? I don't think so. We can just adjourn. Meeting's adjourned.